Jesus teaches us in the second commandment to love thy neighbor as thyself. I didn't realize just how deep that simple command is that we must obey. It's a prerequisite to salvation. And it's the second commandment because it's right behind the first commandment, which is to love God with all your might, all your heart, all your strength. Now, I'm going to put these up on the screen for you to look at. But what I want you to think about is how Jesus took the law of Moses, which he said he came to fulfill, and radically raised the standards beyond what people had expected. For example, where he says, you've heard it said not to murder. But Jesus then talks about how you could murder people just with the words that come out of your mouth. And we've seen that, whether it's school bullying, cyberbullying, ganging up on a person, cutting them down, making them feel horrible. I've done this so many times in my life without even thinking about it. And the emotional pain that it causes people, we wouldn't like it done to us. And so that kind of goes with the rule that he said is to do unto others as you would want them to do unto you. But the problem with carrying on as an angry person, seeking revenge, seeking to declare war on those who are evil, you're violating a commandment of his, which is to love your neighbors. Now, nobody said this was easy, and Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount that you would have to put these into practice. So he understands, obviously being God, that he's going against the conventional thinking. Or when he mentioned that adultery now is no longer just a physical act, it can be lust in a person's heart. Now, I want you to think about these scriptures. In Matthew chapter 12, verse 36 and 37, listen to what he says, quote, I tell you, on the day of judgment, people will give account for every careless word they speak. For by your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned. This is a serious call to action, to be very careful how you say and carry things. Jesus mentioned that you're defiled by what comes out of your mouth, not what goes into it. Is this an easy thing to do? No. It requires a radical transformation in your heart. He also said in Matthew chapter 5 at the Sermon on the Mount, you have heard it that it was said to those of ancient times, meaning the law of Moses, you shall not murder, and whoever murders shall be liable to judgment. But I say to you that if you are angry with a brother or a sister, which can be a disciple, you will be liable to judgment. And if you insult a brother or sister, the Hebrew word at the time was Raca, which means fool. You will be liable to the council. I'm sorry. If you insult a brother or sister, you will be liable to the council. And if you say you fool, which is the Hebrew word Raca, you will be liable to the hell of fire. Think about that. These are words that Jesus is saying, not my words, his words. He goes on to say later in Matthew, you have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist the one who is evil. But if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. And if anyone would sue you and take your tunic, let him have your cloak as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. Give to the one who begs from you, and do not refuse the one who would borrow from you. This is, loving the person who's doing you wrong. Now think about how difficult that commandment is, and how if someone just, once again, using the Joel Osteen Happy Joe thing at the end, where he gives you this rah-rah speech about you're going to be rich and blessed and all this other stuff. And he finally, at the last minute, says, Jesus, come into my heart. I believe if you said this simple prayer. Jesus is showing you, not Joel Osteen, but look what Jesus says here. Give to the one who begs from you, and do not refuse the one who would borrow from you. He doesn't make any exceptions here. So if you see a person who is homeless and is asking you for money, your first instinct may be to recoil. Oh, it's just going to drugs or beer. Maybe it is. Or if someone says they need to borrow money, Jesus is saying to lend it to them. And What Jesus is really teaching here in a simple way, but very profound, of course, since he's God, is the idea of the selfless act. And I'd like you to think in terms of your salvation as being what is a selfless act. He said, don't let the left hand know what the right is doing when it comes to giving to the poor or helping the needy, lest you boast about it, and then your only reward will be what people praise you for. He also says that the Father in heaven sees all, even that which is done in secret, because he sees all, and will praise you for this. Jesus was thinking about the Pharisees and their magnanimous displays of, being followers of the word at the time, when he saw them as nothing more than hypocrites that were only serving their own interests. So he had them to compare everything to, and he was obviously very angry, upset with what they had done to the law of Moses and his father's original commandments. So let's think in terms of, it says, but I say to you that if you are angry with a brother or sister, you'll be liable to judgment. So Jesus does not want you to have grudges. He does not want you to be upset with people where it becomes something that affects your relationships with them. And then in terms of loving your enemies, further on in Matthew 38 to 42, you have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, so here is the change in the law. Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be sons of your Father who is in heaven. For he makes his sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the just and on the unjust. So Jesus is making the parallel here that God the Father still shows mercy to the unjust by allowing rain to fall on them so that they can have crops and whatnot and have water. For if you love those who love you, what reward do you have? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? And if you greet only your brothers, meaning only those that you have a kinship with, what more are you doing than others? Do not even the Gentiles do the same, the non-believers? You must therefore be perfect, as your heavenly Father is perfect. Jesus used the term perfect to talk about the man who told Jesus he had done all of the commandments, but what else is he lacking? And Jesus told him to sell all your possessions, take up your cross, and follow me. Sell your possessions, give them to the poor. And the man walked away very sad. Of course, Jesus knows that humans by nature cannot be perfect, but he's calling us to be perfect. So this dovetails directly with my other video about the narrow gate. What is the narrow gate? In John 10, chapter 7, and John 10:9, you can look at my other video. Jesus admits he is the gate, and it's a narrow gate because the pathway has to lead through him, and many do not find it. Only a few persons do. I hope this video is helpful.